off your engine! Well, don't say I didn't warn you. Ford EcoBoost problems has now led to a class action lawsuit. You get a small engine, you put a turbocharger on, you put GDI fuel injection, all that pressure, and guess what? The engines are having problems with coolants leaking in the engine and destroying the engines. And this is for the 1.5 liter, the 1.6 liter, and the 2 liter EcoBoost. All the 3 and 4 cylinder engines that they're using. You get a small engine, you're going to have to make it a lot stronger if you're going to put that stuff on. And it looks like they didn't. Harkens back to the day, decades ago, when GM decided we're going to make V8 diesel engines. So they took their regular gasoline engine, they turned it into a diesel, but they didn't beef it up for the diesel pressure. And if you know anything about the history of the GM V8 diesels, they were absolute rolling piles of garbage. Now it's alleged that Ford knew about the stuff a long time ago, since 2010, but they say they've kept it hidden. They had a temporary solution like, put a coolant sensor on so they warn them when the coolant is low. Well, the coolant shouldn't be getting low. That doesn't fix the inherent problem. That only makes sure that you don't blow the engine up completely by having no coolant. If the coolant's going somewhere, there's a problem. They're saying it dilutes the oil, which will ruin the engine over time, cause overheating whether it's full of coolant or not, because it's leaking from the cylinders. Ford even had technical service bulletins about the problems, but they didn't fix the underlying problem, that the engines weren't sealing correctly because of all this pressure. And like I've been saying for a long time, you get a small engine, you turbocharge it, you put gasoline direct injection with thousands of PSI pressure from the fuel injectors. If they're not built right, they're going to have problems. They're definitely going to wear out faster, but these are wearing out way too fast. It'd be interesting to see how this class action lawsuit goes. And it's all their little bitty engines. They get problems with some of the bigger ones too, with those water pumps. They're chain driven. If they break, then water can get in the engine, ruin the engine. The chain can break, then the valves will hit the pistons, and you'll have all kinds of engine damage. I'm not a fan of putting a bunch of turbochargers, GDI fuel injection system with high pressure on even a bigger engine, but especially not on a smaller engine unless they are really built correctly. Now, the interesting thing is, GDI injection in turbochargers has been used for decades on diesel engines. But diesel engines have to be built stronger. The companies that make diesel engines understand that. Well, aside from Fiat that makes, diesel engines in Italy and they're junky engines, but then again, they're Italian engines, so what do you expect? But the good companies like Mercedes, Volkswagen makes good diesel engines. So does Volvo. You got to make them stronger if you're going to make a diesel engine that has GDI and turbocharging. Obviously, these 4-cylinder engines, Ford's making gasoline. They weren't made stronger. They're wearing out. And now there's a class action lawsuit. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. But as far as I'm concerned, hey, let's face it. Do you want to get involved in a lawsuit, or do you want to have a vehicle that doesn't break? Me, I'll buy a vehicle that doesn't break and not have to deal with all the legal mumbo-jumbo myself. Well, here we go. The coronavirus pandemic is ruining people's fun yet again. The 2021 Chicago Auto Show that was going to be in February is going to be delayed until sometime in spring, they say. And that's kind of a shame, because if you've ever been to the Chicago Auto Show, that's the most consumer-oriented one. It isn't all fantasy of, here's the future car, here's the, $5 million cars. It's more based on consumer cars and trucks, what people actually buy. It was going to run from February 13th to 21st, but that's gone. And I kind of agree with their idea that don't do it virtually. What is the point of having a virtual car show? People want to go see the car, sit in it. Some of them even let you drive them around. Some of them have little test areas. Who wants to just watch it on a screen or on your phone? I kind of agree with that, at least. They're not doing this virtual BS. And even the Canadians realize it. The Montreal and Toronto auto shows were canceled. They were supposed to be all digital, but they canceled the whole thing, realizing that a digital car show is kind of a joke. It's a waste of time. So sad, but true. People in Chicago and from around the Midwest aren't going to get their Chicago Auto Show for a while, but stay tuned. I'll tell you when they do decide that it's going to be opened up and have an actual show that people can go to and check it out. Eventually, we've got to get things rolling here and stop hiding in the bunker. Come on, people. It's starting to get a bit carried away with this stuff. Because, hey, we all go to the grocery store. We go to all these other places wearing masks. Why not have an auto show with people wearing masks? It wouldn't be any different. I don't know. I don't understand half the stuff that's happening anymore. Spender One says, I got an '02 Nissan Sentra, 97,000 miles, original owner. I've noticed when I start the car, it leaves a puddle of coolant on the ground. When the car's running, it doesn't leak. It only leaks on startup. Where could it come from? Okay, well, first, make sure it's coolant. Because if it's coolant, it's going to be slimy. You can kind of smell it. Antifreeze is kind of slimy, has a distinct odor to it. And if it is, check the water pump. Often the water pumps leak on the weep hole when you start them up, and once it warms up, they stop leaking. But let's say it's just water. All cars leave water behind them when you start them up first thing in the morning. Gasoline is mainly carbon and hydrogen, and when you burn it in Earth's atmosphere, one of the byproducts is H2O, water vapor. And then the water condenses inside the exhaust as it cools, and when you start it up on a cold morning, it'll throw a bunch of water. If the water's coming out of your tailpipe, that's normal, and don't worry about it at all. But if it is coolant, check the water pump first. See where it is, get a flashlight, and if you see that little weep hole, the hole is dripping, you need a new water pump. Hey, son says, I got a brand new 2020 Lexus IS 300. After 2 months, the car jerks forward when it first starts to move, like when you depress the clutch too quickly on a manual transmission. This doesn't happen when I first got it. It only happens when the car is starting from cold or switching from reverse to drive. What should I do? Well, take it to the Lexus dealer. Those are excellent cars. They should ride like a dream. My wife's car is almost 20 years old. They're a Lexus, and it doesn't do any of those things. Could be that there's just a minor programming flaw. Take it in. Maybe they have to reprogram the shifting on a computer. Could be. You don't want to pray it's not anything mechanical, but whatever. They would have to cover it. And since it didn't do it before and it does it now, they can't say, oh, that's normal, they all do that, because yours didn't do it before. So take it in, mention Scotty's name, they all know who I am, and say, hey, is there a way to reprogram the computer? And since it does it mainly when it's cold and stuff, film it on your phone. Get your phone and film it. So they can't say it isn't happening. It could be as simple as they just have to reprogram something. But since it didn't do it and it does it now, and it's that new, it's a brand new car, take it in. They should be able to fix it with a reprogramming. Now, if they don't and it still does it, keep taking it back. They shouldn't have any glitches like that. Those are excellent cars. They're very smooth cars. If it does, something is amiss. Let them figure out what it is. G. Guthrie says, all of my current cars are old with over 150,000 miles. Is there an easy way to fix sun visor from falling down when not in use? Well, actually, there is. They make that Velcro tape, right? Both sides have gluey material on them. You put one on the top, and then you put one on the bottom on the visor. When you push the visor up, the Velcro holds it in place. And then when you pull it down, it releases the Velcro. Now, sometimes the glue on the Velcro doesn't hold too good. And in that case, what I do is I glue them on with JB Weld Quick, the 2-tube epoxy. You glue the bottom one and the top one and let them sit. And then when they're dry, like 12 hours later, then they won't come off. And when you put them up, the Velcro holds them. And when you put them down, it goes comes down, and it works. Quick fix. You don't have to drill any holes or anything. Big 2014 says, watching your videos a long time. I got an '04 Sebring convertible, 2.7 V6, 108,000 miles. I got a grinding noise in cold start that goes away once warmed up. Could it be the water pump? Well, it could. What you want to do is take all the fan belts off and see if the noise goes away. Pray it goes away. Great. Then spin the water pump, spin everything else, see what's grinding. But realize that 2.7 V6 was one of the worst engine Chrysler ever made. And they'll often have internal problems. And if you take those fan belts off and it's still making the noise, you got an internal engine problem. And I would say get rid of that thing as soon as possible. Or you're going to have to rebuild the engine, which is way more than that thing is worth being a 17-year-old Sebring. But if you like it, you could always put another engine in it if it is the engine. But take the belts off. Pray the noise goes away. Then figure out what it is. Could easily be the water pump, alternator, anything can do that. Taking the belts off, they don't spin. It stops. It's one of them. Easy way to test them. Walter Lee 90 says, I found an 87 Celica GT convertible for sale for $1,500 with dings and a busted tailpipe. But it only has 97,000 miles. It's got the 5-speed manual. All right. It's an old car, right? I doubt that that's the real mileage. Guys can get dashes from an old one, or they can run it back. Back then, they weren't even digital speedometers. They were analogs. And we got to drill and run the mileage back. Who knows? So I doubt if the mileage is real. But if it's only $1,500 and it runs good, go ahead and get it. You know, you can't beat it, but you want to be able to drive it. If he says, oh, it doesn't run, don't even think about buying it unless you want to rebuild the whole car. And do check the convertible top, because generally they're going to be all ripped up and you're going to need a new one. But if it runs, now if it doesn't run or it runs poorly, then you're going to have to put a whole bunch of money in, unless you want a project car. It would make a great project car, but if you want a real car to drive every day, make sure that it's running okay now. It's a standard transmission, so you don't have to worry about checking out the automatic transmission. Those are bulletproof transmissions. The only thing that wears are the clutches. So drive it, make sure the clutch isn't slipping. And if the clutch is slipping, well, then you pay them a little bit less. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.